Okay, well, welcome everyone again. Thanks for coming along to this. It's our second Orchard Convo of this first series with uh, Dr. Dr. Paul Horne and Rebecca Addison, and they'll be talking about the life cycles and management of beneficial insects in orchards. So this Orchard Convo series is part of our Orchard Resilience project, which I'll tell you more about in a moment. But firstly, just a little bit about Soils for Life. We're a non-for-profit focused on supporting farmers to regenerate soils for resilient businesses, landscapes, and communities. I'm Talia. I am managing the Orchard Resilience Project, and we've also got Madison here from our team. She's our research and engagement officer, and she's working closely on the Orchard Resilience Project as well. So the Orchard Resilience Project is about supporting fruit and nut growers to build soil health and climate resilience. It's funded by the Australian government through the Climate Smart Agriculture programs under the Natural Heritage Trust. If you could jump ahead in the slide. And we're working with some amazing partners across Australia, namely NRMs and farmer groups. And what this project looks like is pretty varied. It includes events like today's, like webinars and field days. We've also got demonstration farms, which we're really excited about. And we'll also be producing some practice guides and resources. So keep an eye out for those. Before we kick off further, I'd like to acknowledge that I live and work on Palawa country here in Larapuna on the east coast of Lutruwita, Tasmania. Here and where we're all joining from, the practices and Indigenous knowledge systems of tending to land and harvesting fruit and nuts has a really long and deep history. So Source for Life and I would really like to pay our respects to traditional custodians of Australia and their continuous connections to soil and land and water and community. I'd also like to pay my respects to any First Nations people that are with us today. In our Orchard Resilience Project, we're working with Native Foodways. They're a really key partner to explore opportunities for two-way knowledge sharing and fruit and nut farming and land management, which is a really exciting part of the project. So stay tuned for more info on this. Um, as with, all the industries that we work in, we're really keen to hear from farmers themselves. So if you're a fruit and nut grower and you've got experiences in building soil health and climate resilience that you'd be keen to share, we'd love to hear from you. So I think we're going to, my email will be in the chat. Feel free to get in touch directly and always up for a talk and a conversation about anything soil health and orchard related. So the format for these Convo webinars is that we start with a short presentation from a farmer or an expert, and then it's followed by a facilitated Q&A. So the bulk of the session will be your questions and chatting with Paul and Rebecca. If you've got questions while Paul is talking, you can put them straight in the chat, or you can write them down and keep note them to ask later on. We'd ask everyone to stay on mute, but if you have something you'd like to expand on your question, I can invite you to jump on and chat. We'll be trying to wrap up around 12:55, and we do have a short survey that I'd really encourage everyone to take a moment to fill in. It's only 5 questions long, and it really helps us to keep improving these webinars and know what works and what doesn't. Just to wrap up the sort of housekeeping for the webinar, the main thing we ask is that everyone's really respectful of other people's contexts and backgrounds and questions, and take the opportunity in this webinar to stay curious about, different people's contexts that you might hear about. It's worth mentioning, especially when we're talking about orchards and perennial horticulture, we might be drawing on examples from specific crops and farming systems. So it's worth considering your own context and keeping in mind what might be a fit and applicable and what mightn't. I think everyone's doing it, but if you did miss the intro and you're joining later, we'd love to hear who's here. So let us know where you're from and who you are and what you farm if you're a grower in the chat. Might ask Paul to start setting up his slides and I'll introduce introduce him and Rebecca while he does. So yeah, while Paul sets up, I'll introduce them. Paul and Rebecca work together in Australia, assisting farmers and advisors to develop and implement integrated pest management strategies. Paul will be presenting for the first part of the Convo webinar, and then they'll both be pitching in for the Q&A. So Dr. Paul Horne is an entomologist, and since the 90s has been the owner and director of IPM Technologies, which is based in Victoria. A major focus of his work has been the implementation and adoption of IPM strategies. And this has involved a really strong research component on the impact of pesticides on species of beneficial invertebrates. He's written several books. He's published over 70 scientific papers on entomology topics. So it's really great to have him here and be learning from him today. Joining him is Rebecca Addison. She's a consultant with IPM Technologies based in Tasmania, and she's got extensive experience in agronomy, soil health, and has a focus on pest and disease management, irrigation, and nutrition. So yeah, without further ado, I might hand over to Paul.
Okay, thanks, Talia. So I'm going to give you a very quick talk about integrated pest management and how that might look in some different situations. But as you've just heard, Rebecca and I work together. I'm in Victoria, Rebecca's in Tasmania. But probably what's important to know is we don't sell any products. So the focus of our work is to help farmers to control pests with minimal use of pesticides. And that was how it was when I started the company 30 years ago, and that's still the same today. So first of all, in any crop, there's a range of pests. So if you're all growing quite different things, you'll have different pests. But whatever it is, there's a range of pests. So I've put some pests here that apple growers and vineyards might have to deal with, maybe some other crops as well. But there's a whole range of things there. And some of them we call primary pests. And the ones with asterisks, they're often, we regard those as induced pests. They're actually caused in many cases by usually pesticide applications that knock off the beneficial species. So an IPM strategy has to deal with all the pests, not just one or two. So what's IPM? IPM is really, it consists of three parts. Biological control agents are the insects and mites that eat the pest insects and mites. Cultural controls are things that what you do as farmers has an impact on either pests or beneficials. And the third part is pesticides. But today I'm just going to focus on the first two and really not talk much at all about pesticides. But in the question and answer, if you want to ask anything about any pesticides, please do. So the predators, the biological control agents consist of either predators or parasites. So the first ones we look at are predators, and these can either live permanently in the crop or they can move in and out. So if you've got mite problems, such as this rose grower has big mite problems, there's two-spotted mite all over that. Two-spotted mite gets in a whole range of crops, and there's predatory mites as the main biocontrol agent. So the Persimmilus californicus eat mites, Cucumerus usually eat pest thrips. So there's predatory mites. These are some of the most common ones. These are Persimmilus. The adult is orange, the nymphs are paler, and the eggs are oval, they're not round. So we look for those. Almost everyone would recognise ladybirds as being beneficial. There's one that's not, but in most cases, ladybirds are good predators. The adults, everyone recognises the larvae, and so in this picture there's a juvenile ladybird on the left. That will turn into the ladybird on the right. but it's actually the juvenile stage that does most of the predation. And so it's important to recognise those. So this particular one's a southern Australian species. It likes eating aphids. But there's others, and this one here is a native species. It's found across much of Australia. It's called Stethurus, and it's a little black ladybird about the size of a pinhead. And what it eats is mites, pest mites. So it cleans up big populations of mites. It's very small, but it does a good job. And once again, the juvenile stage is the really important bit. And they're really tiny. So if the adult's the size of a pinhead, this picture here shows the larval stage buried amongst the leaf hairs on a plant. So they're really tiny, but they do a great job. In a lot of tree crops and vines, one of the most important predators we have are the green lacewings. Once again, these are native species. The picture shows an adult. The adults aren't predatory. It's the juvenile stage that's predatory. The adults don't feed on other insects. So this is a juvenile lacewing. It's got great big jaws. They're hollow, and they just walk up and suck the juice out of whatever they want to eat. And this little video shows what they do. This is one eating an aphid, and when it's finished eating it, whatever remains, it piles on spines on its back. And so all that white stuff that you can see there, they're its previous meals. So that makes them actually quite easy to spot. They eat a whole range of things. This is a very, very small juvenile green lacewing eating an apple dimpling bug, which is one of the important pests in apple crops. So they eat a range of they're generalist predators. They'll eat a whole range of different things. And the last one I'll show you is spiders. All spiders are predatory. They catch their food in different ways. Some, a lot use webs, but others chase down their prey. They ambush them. But there's no plant feeding spiders. So potentially all spiders are biocontrol agents. There's a lot more predators. This is just a quick view. Then the other sort of biocontrol agents are parasitoids. They're just insects that live as parasites inside, usually, the body of their host, which means that they're hidden for most of their life. And so you don't know they're there. They're often really underestimated. This picture here shows a mass of eggs. They've been laid by a moth. They've a cluster of eggs, but you can see they've all turned black. And that's because they've been parasitized by the smallest insect we have in Australia, which is a trichogramma wasp. So they're tiny, tiny insects. You probably never see the adults because they're so small. But if you see black eggs, usually that's a sign they've been parasitized. So this just shows them emerging and crawling around. They're small, but what you might also notice is every one of those eggs has turned black. It hasn't missed any. It's got 100%. So to show you how hard they are to see, it's the same photo, one enlarged. So the picture on the left shows a moth egg with a trichogramma adult wasp right next to it. So it's very, very hard to see them, but you can see that egg quite clearly. And if it turns black, you'll know that it's parasitized. Then there's a whole lot of parasitoids that attack caterpillars and other insects. And you can see the adults. This one's a relatively large one. This is about the size of a mosquito. This particular one attacks diamondback moth, but it's just an example. Every caterpillar that we have would have parasites like this attacking it. This is a female, and it's got a little prong at the back, and it uses that to inject an egg into its host, the host being a caterpillar. And so when you look at a caterpillar, how do you know if it's parasitized or not? You really can't tell. In most cases, it's impossible. This particular one in the photo could be parasitized, might not be. So the simplest way to find out, is it parasitized or not, is to pull it apart. And if you pull it apart, if it's parasitized, there's a maggot inside. So this is completely separate from all of its guts. It's the green thing there is the maggot that would turn into that adult wasp once it's killed the caterpillar. So they're there, but they're usually underestimated because you can't see them easily. So that's it for the biological controls. The next part of IPM is cultural controls. And if you want to encourage some of those beneficial species, the best way you can do it is to provide a habitat and possibly an alternative food source. So sometimes people do these for other reasons, but the cultural controls, they have a massive impact. I've listed some of the others. Weed control. I showed a picture of light brown apple moth earlier. That's a pest in a few different crops. It loves capeweed, and so controlling capeweed is the best way of reducing the population over winter of that particular pest. Then if you've got an orchard, the tree spacing, canopy management, they have also a massive impact on either pest or beneficial species. One of the most important for a whole range of crops, if mites are a problem, is dust control. So wherever there's dust, it chokes out the predatory mites in particular, and so you get pest problems. So usually the ends of rows, dusty tracks, they're a problem. There's some other things like movement of people, hygiene. These are all cultural controls that either encourage beneficials or help to lower the pest pressure. The list is endless. This is just a very quick view of some of the important ones. This photo here shows a dam bank in a veggie growing part of Victoria, and there's no flowering plants other than these aniseed weeds. We ask growers to actually leave them because they're a really good nectar source for beneficial species. And if things like parasitic wasps get a nectar source to feed on, they'll live much, much longer than if they only have access to water. Inter-row management. This is immensely important. So some growers around Mildura, for instance, growing table grapes, they like to have nothing in the inter-row, just bare ground. And we think that's not good. And in this case, the two photos show a grassy inter-row. And the picture on the right shows a vineyard where we've asked the grower to, when he goes through in springtime, not mow every row, just mow every second row. And that means there's pollen and nectar, which is a food source for beneficials, and it's also choking out the capeweed and other weeds. Tree height is really important, and even if IPM isn't one of the factors you're interested in, even just spray coverage, if the tree is too tall, it's impossible to get coverage. But the spacing and canopy management influences microclimate, which affects both pests and beneficials. If people get this right, they often don't have problems with mites in particular, mealybugs, aphids. These things are controlled by the combination of beneficial species and cultural methods that encourage them. So this shot here shows a macadamia orchard, and the trees are really tall. What you can see is there's very little light gets through to the base in this particular spot, and there's no grassy interrow. So there is no pollen and nectar source for beneficial species in this particular example. This is another macadamia orchard, totally different. You can see the tree height is much less, the spacing is much greater, and the management is totally different. This is a shot of a macadamia orchard that used to be really tall, like the one in the first photo a couple of shots ago. And what the grower's done is made a really hard decision and has lowered the tree height, taken out every second tree. And so the canopy, and you can see there's now light reaching the bottom, and there's alternative food source for beneficial species down at ground level, not just weed control here. The picture on the left shows a vineyard. All the yellow stuff is capeweed, and so that vineyard is going to have big problems with light brown apple moth simply because of the level of the weed control there. Marshmallow weed and dock, they can be good hosts for a pest that we don't usually worry about, and that's one called harlequin bugs. These are native species, and once synthetic pesticides started to be used, they really weren't a problem. But now, as growers are using less and less of the broad spectrum insecticides, these pests are reappearing. The control is really weed management. That's the key. But it's a pest that used to be a major problem, and potentially it's one to watch out for again. I suggest you look at other crops as well, because they can often have the same issues. If two-spotted mite is a problem, it's the same issue in a whole range of horticultural crops, including the watermelons that are here, grown in a really dry area. Dust control is one of the major things that they try and do to help control the pest problems. And this is the last slide. Said I'm not going to talk about pesticides, but obviously insecticides and miticides are designed to kill insects and mites, and so you really need to be careful what you use. You need to consider all pests and all inputs. So insecticides and miticides are important, but fungicides also can be just as important. So this photo here shows a vineyard, or some vines in a vineyard that have been sprayed with not insecticides but fungicides that killed predatory mites, which allowed rust mite to develop. And so this isn't a bad photo. Those leaves should be green. They're black because the rust mite has stripped the cuticle off. If you look carefully, you can see some green leaves. So it's, that colour is true. So that had a massive impact on pest control. And so consider all impacts, all inputs, not just insecticides. And I think that's the end. So I'll stop the sharing and hand it back to Talia.
Thanks so much, Paul. That was great. Well, yeah, would invite everyone to pop any questions you have in the chat. We'll do our best to get to all of them and sort of start from the top. And if anyone's got questions they'd specifically like to address to Paul or Rebecca, although I think they'll jump in where they see fit on both, feel free to mention that. So I think that Robin might have mentioned while you were talking, Paul, she mentioned, are there any, or the planting pollinator and predator attracting flowers? Are there any flowers that are attractive in a warm temperate WA climate? Quite specific, but if there's any like principles, I suppose, as well that you'd consider when looking at flower, adding diversity to the orchard.
Yeah, what we usually suggest is look for a range of different flowering plants so that you get flowers over an extended period of time, not just one flush. And so plants that are native to the area obviously are going to survive better, need less management. There's a lot of information on the internet about if you want to plant things artificially, you can do that. And there's some very common species that come up all the time. We've had growers actually plant a range of flowers in bins, like apple bins or potato bins, so they move them around with a forklift. So that's for some quite intensive crops, so it can be done. and so you can grow them ahead of time and then move them in, or permanent plantings of native species that flower over an extended time would be much better, but you need the land and you need them there with flowers way ahead of planting any particular crop. If it's an orchard, you've got the opportunity to do that more easily, I think. The only thing I'd say is don't plant too many red flowers. Usually, it's not a hard and fast rule, but often red flowers are bird pollinated. And so if you want insects, they're attracted to other colours too.
I might just jump in and add something else that and it does also depend on what sorry, my internet might not work very well. It also does depend on what kind of predators you're trying to attract. So if you're trying to attract a lot of wasp parasitoids, then the best type of flower for those are smaller flowers. So we show the picture of the weeds on the dam bank there. So they're an umbelliferous flower. So they've got a big flower head with actually lots of little tiny flowers in amongst that one head. And that's perfect for those little wasps to come and get a little nectar feed in. And if you have any of those sort of plants growing around, so things like parsley seed, coriander seed, carrots, all sorts of those kind of flowers, you'll see that they're very attractive to a lot of little flying insects. So they're really important for those. If you're wanting some more mite predators, sometimes just even little grass pollen is fine. Other little flowers that have pollen on the ground, they're really important as well. So it does depend also a little bit on what you're trying to attract and why. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Lots of nuggets of gold in those answers. Robin, did that answer your question?
Sorry. Yeah, fairly well. I guess my number one pest issue that I have, and pretty much my only pest issue, I'm in a mango orchard, is medfly. So is there anything that is predator to a medfly?
I think there are predators, but I guess it depends whether the issue is, quarantine and, how many are you allowed to have. But yeah, there's a range of things. But I think, when you look at IPM, it's trying to build as many control options as possible. So the biocontrol is one, but the cultural controls are probably the most important. And then
we run the poultry through the orchards.
Yeah.
And then we use a Ceratrap and a foliar spray of Fulvic and Vermicast. So we didn't actually have any issues with the medfly actually attacking the mangoes. Once where we had poor management issues where they were left, we were picking them up off the ground every day, but where we sort of had them out of the orchard and left rotting a bit before we were feeding them to animals, we had a bit of pressure there. I think the most issues we had with the medfly was our personal use fruits. So the stone fruit, the peaches and the nectarines got absolutely annihilated. So yeah, I guess it's just, is there a predator that will go after it? And if there is, what is it? And what can I plant to attract it?
Yeah. I can't give you a specific, but like every insect has its own natural enemies, so they would be there. And probably local people would be able to tell you more precisely. But I know in other parts of the country they do use sterile male releases as one of the control options.
Yeah,
and, that's done in WA at least.
Yep.
I'm not sure whereabouts are you? You're in.
So we're an hour north of Perth.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, up around, I think around Carnarvon, they do sterile male releases.
Yeah, okay.
It might be something that you can use, but those sort of things need to be done on a fairly large scale. Otherwise, as you know, hygiene is so important, and so if something else is going on off that's next to you, but you can't control it, then that's a major problem.
Absolutely. Look, and deep herd aren't overly bothered with it. They've got the Q-fly traps out everywhere. I've got a Q-fly trap at the front of my property. And when I asked, look, can I get some help with the medfly? The response was, we're not really interested.
Right. Yeah, I can't help you with that.
Yeah, obviously. Yep.
But maybe have a look and see what's around up at Carnarvon and see what they're doing there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, my next door neighbour's got a property in Carnarvon as well, so I might have a chat with him.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Robin. Awesome. We've got another interesting question from Simon. What would be the minimum distance between an area with flowers in the interrow and an area with bare interrow to test and compare the effect of beneficial insects, looking at the effect and differences in pollination and pest pressure, and to not interfere with the results in a tree crop farm? So it sounds like if you're wanting to do a trial, how would you maybe go about setting that up?
Yeah, so we'd probably need to talk to you a bit more in detail about that specifically, but in general, it depends what you're trying to encourage. So as Rebecca said, if they're, resident species of mites that you want to encourage, that's very different to flying insects that are going to move. So there's been work done on parasitic wasps and how far they will move, and they will go a couple 100 meters without any problem at all. The ones that I showed you the picture of, it's about the size of a mosquito, so it's pretty small, but they can move hundreds of meters backwards and forwards. So you'd need to take that into account. It does make a huge difference in the life of the wasps. I think I mentioned that briefly, but we had a student look at it once, and adult female wasps that emerged and only got water would only live for a couple of days. But if they got a sugar feed or a nectar source, they could live for 60 to 90 days. So it's an absolutely massive difference. And depending on the species, it doesn't have to be right adjacent. They can move, reasonable distances.
Awesome. Thank you. Robin also mentioned, so just check this one off in case there's some interesting resources that you both might share. Do other states have a My Pest Guide app they can use? There's the one in WA, she said, is a great tool and good for identification of insects, beneficial and pests. Are there any other key sort of resources, maybe state specific or Australia wide, that you suggest farmers get their hands on?
Yeah, I'd suggest getting a whole range of things and not just from the crop that you're interested in necessarily. The generalist predators like lacewings, ladybirds, they're beneficial insects in a whole range of crops. So there's some good guidebooks around, but there's a lot of overlap between broadacre cropping, vegetables, and even tree crops in the types of beneficials that you might be interested in. So I wouldn't, be too restricted to, just your crop type.
Unfortunately, though, I'm not aware of anything else like that in other states. There's obviously quite a lot of different apps that have come online now that you can take a picture of something and it tells you, like the plant snap, it tells you what it is or directs you what it might be. But we have found often things like that tend to send people in the wrong direction. So it is something to be mindful of, maybe back it up with some other resources if you're using apps like that. Tasmania, I know, has got a Insects of Tasmania guidebook, but also an online kind of resource for that as well, and that's really useful. And iNaturalist as well is also a good resource to go to sometimes if you're just trying to get down to a bit of detail of what you might be finding. But we also welcome people to send us photos. If you've got something you're not sure about, just send us a photo or email with the photo or a text message and just say, I'm finding this, what can it be? And we can help direct you with that as well. We tell this to every group we talk to, and it's very rare people send us anything. So honestly, we're happy to receive them if you do want to know anything.
And one thing I'll add is, like, you can look at the internet and you can find all sorts of information, but the common names, so green lacewings, I showed you a green lacewing. Our green lacewing is very different to the American or the UK green lacewing. So if you're searching on the internet, just make sure that the information you're getting is relevant to the Australian species.
Awesome, thank you. Warren has also asked a question about planting the interrows, but in citrus. He said or they're in central Queensland. Is there anything you'd add to your the great info you shared before to Robin's question that's citrus specific for interrow planting?
I think that there's various grass species that people have worked on in citrus in Queensland that provide a pollen source for predatory mites. That's the main one that I know about. And you just want to make sure you're not planting anything that actually will feed up any of your pests. So just double check that.
Great. Charlie has said that they've got problems with fruit spotting bugs in mangoes and custard apples. How far do they fly to come feast on our orchard? We're introducing anastasis wasps.
So how far do the pests fly, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't say specifically, but I would think they would move at least, the hundreds of meters that I said the beneficial insects can move, and probably more. One thing that people have done, especially if you're releasing anastasis, is to plant a really susceptible tree that they like, So it's almost a trap crop. You can consider it a trap crop and then deal with it, or you can use it as a nursery plant. And once the fruit spotting bugs go in to that susceptible tree, you release the anastasis in there, and so you get a nursery going, which then the beneficial insects will move out from that. So that has been done.
Anything you wanted to add to that, Charlie? Oh. That's okay. We'll move on to Pete's question. How can we encourage green lacewing habitat in central West New South Wales, trying to preemptively control olive lacebug?
Yeah, I mean, they are predatory insects, so they're only going to be abundant where there's a food source. So it's really hard to get a range of predators in ahead of a food source. So that's the predator-prey cycle. So unless you had some trap plants with some other food source on it, you could put something that attracts aphids that you don't really care about. So sacrificial plantings, it's called. And so you encourage a pest, which then encourages beneficials. So if you wanted to build up a population of green lacewings, you need to provide a food source. And because of the way they feed with their hollow jaws, you can't spray something that will then be a dry deposit. They actually need to eat insects.
Great. Julia has asked to Paul, do you have any advice for IPM tools or beneficials for chili thrips in blueberries or citrus?
Can I ask whereabouts that is? Is it WA?
It isn't. Oh, yes. Yep, in WA.
Yeah. I know it's a really serious problem, and I don't have any quick answers to that. I know the biocontrol producers have been trying very hard to find other predators. So there's predators that eat western flower thrips, that eat onion thrips, things like that. But the chili thrip seems to be much tougher. We usually suggest that the main things that eat thrips are predatory mites and even predatory thrips. So there's also predatory bugs. So there's a range of things there, but I don't think there's one particular beneficial at the moment that'll say this is your answer. And I also know that where growers have been using insecticides, they're tough to kill, and so they're broad spectrum insecticides. Chili thrips is now resistant, I believe, in WA to just about anything you can spray. And so that's not the path I would go down. I would certainly try and encourage a range of soil dwelling and foliar beneficial species. And hopefully the biocontrol producers will come up with something that's even better than what we've got at the moment.
Thank you. Charlie's asked another question. If you don't have pollinator flowers, would putting out honey help as a food source for anastasis bugs and wasps?
I guess it would, but it's how long is it going to sit there? I don't know, and you probably don't want to encourage too many other pest species, and that includes ants. And so ants often protect things like mealybugs and aphids because they want the sugar. So you don't want to actually feed up a pest. That's just a caution, like it probably would do what you want, but you'd want to make sure you kept an eye on it and made sure it wasn't encouraging any pest species.
Great, that's good. A great suggestion. One slightly broader question that's come through is I've heard people say that when you're improving your sort of like soil health and nutrition, some people see fewer pests and disease problems. Have you seen this work in practice?
I can say, if I look at it the other way around, stressed plants, unhealthy plants, they usually have more pest problems. There's something about them that things like aphids find really attractive. So healthy plants obviously are going to be a much better situation than a stressed plant. I think, as I said just before, IPM involves building a set of control options, and soil health, plant health is one of the cultural controls, along with the biological controls and maybe some pesticides. But most of the crops that we grow, we've grown them because people want to eat them, and so we've bred out a lot of the natural defences, which are bitter tasting compounds. And so if you think of brassicas, cauliflowers and cabbages, we want them to taste nice, not taste like wild radish or wild turnip. And so you don't see so many caterpillar pests on those wild weeds. But I don't know whether Rebecca wants to add anything more to that or not.
Yeah, I'll just add in that there's definitely a lot more research starting to happen in that space now. And there's, I think John Kemp has really pushed this way of thinking as well. Higher brix plants having being much less open to insect attack and things. And I think we do see that, particularly where particularly some insects, so some of those sucking pests and mites as well, wherever. But that's what we are finding is particularly more high nitrogen related. So any balanced plant is obviously going to be better for a whole lot of reasons, particularly if you've got low calcium, then you can't get that cell wall strength in your plants either. So it makes it a lot easier for insects to pierce those leaves and attack those plants. But particularly if you're having too high nitrates in your plant, that really does attract some of those sucking insects. So things like aphids, mealybugs, scale. And sometimes that's not necessarily also just because of too much nitrogen or nitrate, but sometimes it's also because there's a lack of some of those other really important nutrients that metabolize the nitrogen and turn it into more complex proteins. So there's often a two-way street there. So yeah, nitrogen is really something to look at for sure.
Thank you. Really comprehensive answers. Yeah, do any of the growers in the room have a quick story about plant resilience with soil health and nutrition that they wanted to share briefly? If not, I'll move across to the next question. So Paula has asked, are you aware of any research looking at the range of beneficials encouraged in inter-row cover crops and plantings or flower plants? Have there been any comparisons of traditional versus this method?
I can't point you to any specific studies that I know, but I know there's been that work has been done. But sometimes it's not recent research; it's actually really old research. It might be from even before the pesticide era, and where there was a lot of work on controlling pests with the type of plants that were present back in the the 1940s, 1950s, and so some of that old material it just still holds true.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, if anyone in the room has knowledge of great resources or research, feel free to share, and we can always share them around with in a follow-up email if there's anything in particular.
You might find them sort of buried in sort of manuals on particular crops. They'll go through a whole range of options, and so it might not be a specific scientific study that's presented, but it'll be summarized basically in, like, if you have a manual for citrus, they'll talk about inter-row management.
Awesome. Yeah, I do know that there was a great project in the maca industry on inter-row cover cropping. So I wonder if that's an example, like you're talking about, Paul, sort of like industry-specific resource that has got some examples.
Yeah, that's right. Like in macadamias, they call it the mohawk strip down the middle, and that was what I was talking about, trying to actually let light in, and very specific issues in that industry. The nuts fall to the ground, so they need clear ground to pick them up. But if they have bare ground totally, then there's no life at the soil surface. So they made a thin, manageable strip to provide that. So very industry specific, but the principles are the same.
Yeah, awesome. On the topic of macadamias, Simon has asked a question about timing for the release of beneficial mites. So they've said that their last chemical application before harvest in macas, they usually apply a broad spectrum insecticide. The thrip population increases after the new flush in February. Would you consider doing a release of beneficial mites to reduce the population? And then about the timing before or after that last application. Again, I suppose specific, but if there's some principles or things you'd encourage Simon to consider.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that broad spectrum spray. We often hear growers say we put on a cleanup spray at the end, and is that really necessary? Maybe it is, but if there's another way around that, I would be looking at that first. And then as far as releasing beneficial insects of any sort, usually it's not the insects that you release that give you control, it's their offspring. So they need to reproduce and multiply. So you don't want to leave it too late. And so when that broad spectrum insecticide goes on, you've got to look at how long the residual impact will be. And depending on what it is, some of them can, in protected cropping anyway, could last 3 months after one spray before you could release beneficials. Outdoors, it's not going to be anywhere near like that long, but you wouldn't want to release them too soon after that spray because they'll just die. And there needs to be a food source for them. and that you need to give them time to breed up. Might breed pretty quickly, so a few weeks, and you'll have another generation go through.
Hopefully that was helpful, Simon. Maybe a quick follow-up question to that was, when people are transitioning to some of the biological and cultural controls you're mentioning, is there any sort of what would you suggest in sort of managing that transition, or trying some of these, like a biological or cultural control for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, as far as what Rebecca and I spend most of our time doing, it's that transition between what's familiar and what's totally new. And most people don't want to bet the farm on something they've never seen work or even seen. So we encourage people to try an IPM approach, like get the plan done and then try it on either a paddock or a block or a strip. That's where you can have a look at what works, what doesn't work, or what you need to improve. Usually where growers are, really hesitant, they try it on a small area in year one. When they see that's successful, they'll do a larger area in year two. When that's successful, often they'll go to the whole farm in year three. So, but seeing is believing, and people want to see it on their own farm before they make the commitment. So certainly your own trials are the best way to go forward.
Great, thank you. Actually, sorry, Jeff, a while ago, maybe not fruit or nut specific, but has asked the question about predators for giant wood moss north of Gympie in Queensland.
I don't know. I'm afraid.
No, that's fine.
Every caterpillar would have its own predators and parasites. How effective they are, I don't know. They would be there, but like if you're looking at big grubs already boring inside a tree, they've escaped those. So, but parasitic wasps are often the key to a lot of these pests.
Jana has asked about pheromone and attractant traps for some species of stink bugs. Or no, she's saying maybe there are already traps for stink bugs, but what about for mango flower beetle or companion plants and predators to think about?
I'm not sure about pheromones for those. Like, there's usually two sorts of pheromones that are available, but they're almost always really, really specific. So for a company or an organization to develop them, they need to be, probably a pretty major pest. So the minor ones, they're not that likely to be commercial pheromones. There's sex pheromones or there's aggregation pheromones. They're the most common ones. If you know that there's something they really like, whether that's a plant or some product, you can make your own. So that's a very specific question. So I think I'd ask people that are more familiar with that particular pest.
Awesome, thank you. And thanks everyone for the great resources you're sharing between each other in the chat. Appreciate it. We're coming to a close, so maybe I'll just ask one more final question to wrap us up. And maybe, if people are keen to see more beneficials or understand the role of beneficials in their orchards, is there any practical methods you can suggest people use to kind of keep an eye or track their beneficial insects, maybe if they don't have any sort of specialized equipment or a heap of time?
Yeah, once again, it depends what beneficials they are. They'll be different in the different crops, but I wouldn't underestimate direct searching. That's just going out with a hand lens and having a look, you know. So the main tool that Rebecca and I use is a 10 times hand lens. And, you know, sometimes we bring things back to look at under a microscope, but, you know, most things you can see. So if there's traps that are commercially available or you can make, you can use those. They will attract the mobile stage of the insects. But things like eggs or pupae or galls, you know, the non-mobile ones, having a look with, you know, just turning over leaves, having a look with a hand lens, there's no other way to find them. So it's using a few tools is the way to go.
Awesome. Anything you'd add, Rebecca, to finish up?
No, I think that covers it, really. Yeah, you can't hand lens and just go looking for things. Different times of the year, they're going to find different predators, different pests, obviously. So one thing we haven't really spoke about is we don't use thresholds either in any of our decision making. So with an IPM program, we just really encourage monitoring. So, you know, very regular monitoring as well, and looking for all life stages of the pests and beneficials that are important in your crop. And yeah, we actually monitor the trends of those things. So are the pest numbers increasing, but are the beneficials increasing as well? And they're going to, you know, it might look bad at the moment, but in a week or so's time, the predators are going to crush that pest population. So just being able to, yeah, monitor for all life stages is really important. And, you know, we need to know a whole lot of different pests and beneficial species, but in a lot of things that you're working in, you're going to have very specific things that you need to look for and identify. So it's all possible. Yeah.
I think that's a great note to finish on. Thank you. Well, yeah, thanks everyone for your questions and taking part, and especially Paul and Rebecca for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. I think it's quite impressive to be able to field questions from like people across Australia and across different industries and places. So yeah, big thank you. Just to wrap up, we have 2 more cropping convos next week. We've got one with Dean Metcalf on biological controls in orchards on Wednesday, and Abigail Makem on biodiversity and inter-row management. So if you'd like to keep thinking about some of the things we've spoken about today, we'd love to see you there. I think we've got the info in the chat. We also just released a podcast with Paul yesterday. We've popped the links in there as well. So if you'd like to hear more from Paul, take a listen to that. It's a great conversation between him and the Fields for Life CEO Ellie Court. And yeah, finally, just would really encourage everyone to take a moment now to fill out the survey that's in the chat that Madison's added. Yeah, your feedback is really important and we take all of it into account. So would really appreciate it if you could find the time to do that. And we will follow up with an email with the recording of today, so you've got it. And yeah, just appreciate you all turning up and hope to see you next week at the next Orchard Convo.